All right, in 3, 2, 1. On October 11th, from 5 until 9, the whole Your Dark Companion gang is going to be out at Smoky Rose. Join your old friends and new hosts from every show on the Sunset Lounge. That means Shippy and Groobs will be there. Beer 30 Sports O'Clock will be there. The Clubhouse will be there. Even the Angle will be there. And a whole lot of new shows that we've got coming up. Insurance Unhinged and What's Your End Game. And, of course, the entire Your Dark Companion crew will be there. Now, you say, okay, well, what is this Smoky Rose you speak of? Well, it's a Tex-Mex barbecue joint in the heart of East Dallas. You need the burn-ins. Let me tell you, you need them. You may think you don't, but I'm telling you, you do. I was never a big burn-in guy until I went to Smoky Rose. Tried one, and now, long story short, I don't want anything else from them. I love it. All their meats are smoked in their wood-burning smoker, low and slow. That's the right way to do this. And if you want to go the salad route, well, they got several of those to choose from, and they're all loaded with the freshest ingredients. Whatever you choose, you will not go home hungry, and don't forget to grab a carefully crafted cocktail. And the vodka bar will be open. They're located in East Dallas, right across from the Arboretum. Smoky Rose has the perfect seat for you inside in a large, comfy booth or out on their patio. They are open for brunch on Sundays. Happy hour is from 3 until 6. They're at 8602 Garland Road in Dallas. We will be there October 11th, the whole crew from 5 until 9, and we would love to see you out there.
Nobody would have thought that I would be the one. Rhyner, Sports Talk. Baseball, 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 baseball.
Oh, with the big mic. Oh, okay. All right, yeah. Okay, now I get it.
We've had a lightning strike, boys. What happened over there, Grego? We had a little lightning strike right outside the window.
The Texas Rangers win the World Series.
All right. Here's a tip for all these Americano League teams.
Wait, you said tip?
Yeah, tip.
Okay.
With a P.
Keep jamming.
The ticket, colon, nothing but a big Gen X jerk-off sake.
This is a cool night or what?
Although somebody would hear that and go, bullshit.
I'm back, bitches.
Warmest greetings to one and all. It is another episode of Your Dark Companion. We're glad you were with us as we emanate live from the Your Dark Companion mothership in here. I would be Mike Rhyner. We're joined by Shoopy, Ashley, Mickey, and today's very special guest on this, the 7th of September. No, we're not going to revel in Cowboys' victory last night. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to talk with the great Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News.
Yes.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Evan. It's good
Hello,
to see
gang.
you.
It's good to be here.
Hi, Evan.
Hi, Shoopy.
Love you.
Really,
Well, I don't know about that.
everybody loves you.
My dog loves me. My wife occasionally. I don't know about anybody else.
Well, I do.
Thanks.
You don't see how everybody else sees you. Everybody likes you.
They don't like me when I post the Ranger lineups on Twitter.
Yeah, well, that might slow their roll in some way. Has anybody given you a reason for not liking that?
Well, because they, for some reason, I guess, think that I'm the complaint department on how Bruce Bochy deploys his lineup every day. And I've taken these to Bochy on occasion, and he doesn't seem to agree with most of the arguments. So,
So it's just a bunch of bitching for the sake of bitching, huh?
that's why Twitter exists.
I was going to say,
Yep,
that's
it
social
does.
media.
That's right. Well, the season is over, and the first thing I want to know as I started thinking about you and having you on here is what happens to Evan Grant when baseball is over with? Now, we got the postseason going on. Do you watch it?
Well, I definitely took this weekend off. It was a good weekend to watch college football, so I decided to watch that. But first of all, to answer your question seriously, work-wise, there's stuff going on throughout the offseason. Mm-hmm. The free agency parade starts November 1st, and with baseball there is not the same kind of cadence that exists with the NBA or the NFL, because free agency lasts all winter long. There's some good to that. There's some bad to that. But it's a little bit slower. Right now, I just started this morning doing a series where we're kind of going through each area of the roster and grading the team and kind of reviewing and looking a little bit ahead. But there's other stuff to do during the winter time, or this year during the fall as well, since it's a longer off season.
Right.
I mean, that's when I get the bulk of my off time, and so I basically leave my wife at home for a good portion of the year and try to make up a little bit more quality. And we'll take a good trip this winter at some point.
Do you ever totally just decompress and shut it down from baseball, shut it down from all sports, and just give yourself a little time to, I don't know, think about other things that you might enjoy or whatever?
You know, when we go on vacation, whether it's during the regular season, if I take a week off, or if we go somewhere else in the off season, the first 3-4 days I'm completely detached from the sports world and baseball, and then I find the itch to kind of catch up on what's going on starts to hit about that, and Gina knows when that's coming. But if we can get off of the continent and go to Europe, that tends to occupy me a little bit better. So
yeah,
that's what we're going to try and do this time.
Have you had any breaking news come down while you're on vacation, and maybe had been away for a couple days from your phone and stuff like that?
So 2 years ago, right, when the Bochy thing happened, right,
yeah.
we were on top of the Bochy thing, and I had actually pre-written something with the anticipation that this was going to happen. And I had promised Gina that we would go to New England for fall foliage. Leaves don't really do it for me, or they didn't until we actually went there, and it was amazing. But
nice.
When the actual news broke, when they got the deal done, this was a couple days before the actual press conference. But when they got the deal done, we were on the top of a mountain in New Hampshire. And I had cell phone service for about a minute, and somebody had texted me, and I was able to get it confirmed, and then we were able to go with the story. But yes, I have been in some odd places when stuff has happened. Fortunately, most of the time, it hasn't been something that was unforeseen.
Okay. When you're out somewhere like that, are you writing the story? How do you typically write a story? Like on a laptop, on your phone?
On the laptop.
I kind of figured.
With Bochy, again, because we had seen that one coming, and I had pre-written something before we kind of left, and before I was out of touch. There are times when you've got to dictate something over the phone now. Used to be, right? You'd call the office.
I was going to say, that's how they did in the old days.
But now you can text it in, or you can send a couple sentences on Slack if you need to update something. The biggest question is you've got to make sure you've got cell phone service, and that was the scariest point at that point, because we were literally like looking out over this overlook, and I get this text, and then I'm trying to text the guy back, and I've got no signal again.
Oh, so, brutal.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't take me to tell you that the media landscape is changing a good bit out there. Yeah. I mean, in every form of medium you can possibly imagine. And I was really interested in the news that came down, I think last week or maybe the week before that, about the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and the way they're going to be rolling from here on in, publishing, twice a week or something like that?
Yeah, twice a week and a Sunday edition.
And there are a lot of papers that have gone that route. And I mean, I don't know what the long-term media landscape is. That's way above my pay grade. But I do think, look, we have all turned to becoming a digital-first enterprise, and what's in the printed edition of the paper usually is not the last thing you've written that night. Usually not the first thing you've written that day. It's more a compendium of what's gone on over the course of the day. It's difficult, and it breaks my heart that I walk out and back of my house, and I'm the one person that's getting the newspaper in our subdivision. But it is the landscape. I do think, and I'm just promo the morning news for a second. I think our iPad thing that we have on the iPad, where you can actually get the physical paper on your iPad, is a fantastic product. And for me, that's how I read the paper most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't get newsprint on my fingers either.
Well, I still subscribe.
God bless you.
I still subscribe just out of loyalty and just because that's the way I've always done it. That's the way I was brought up.
But that's right, Mike. This is the thing, right? Well, you and I come from a generation where, like, and I've moved to a bunch of different towns, but you move to a place and you got a place to live. You set up phone service. You set up your utilities, and then you set up newspaper. And I always thought that the newspaper, or whatever you want to call it, the digital form of the newspaper now, was a utility. And it's disheartening for me to see that so many people don't view it that way.
That's the way I tend to view it too, and always have kind of like a utility. The season in baseball is unlike any other. It's long. It's virtually every day. Is it hard to maintain focus through all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's days where you wish you could do it over, and there are day games after night games on road trips that are a little bit difficult because you get back to the hotel at 12 and you literally fall into bed, get up and go back to the ballpark, and it's a short turnaround. But I'm not going to sit here and bitch about the difficulties of my job because I get to go cover a baseball game every day and basically write what I see. I talk to people. We have good conversations. I'm very privileged in that regard, and I cannot. The fact that I've just finished my 28th season covering this team, I would never have ever thought that I'd have that long a tenure on a beat, or that I'd feel that privileged to be connected to a fan base in that way.
28 years, and before you came here,
was of Gannett that owned USA Today. And so I lived in Miami. I covered the Marlins. I covered University of Miami football. I would occasionally do some University of Miami basketball, but I was kind of their bureau guy there. So that was fun. I covered a Miami football team that didn't win the national championship and had Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis, and The Rock all on the defensive front, all on the defensive starting side.
Such an insane team.
They lost to Nebraska in the Orange Bowl in the national championship game. It was amazing.
Didn't have that winning mentality.
Yeah.
The cult of personality must have been huge with that thing.
Oh my God! It was kind of the beginning of the end for that, but yeah, it was a different atmosphere, and the Orange Bowl was so amazing to go to on night games.
What's a typical day like? This might be a bit of a broad question, but a typical day like during the season, like when you're getting up, when you're going to bed, what you're doing in between, when you get to the ballpark, all that.
Well, first, I mean, this has become part of the routine, right? The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is retweet all the stuff that I wrote the night before because I think it's important to get that out. This is the part of the job that's changed that I feel like I quote unquote grasp a little bit is there's no longer a newspaper guy delivering your paper, throwing it on the front yard. I've got to get the information to you. So that's why I do tweet like a degenerate constantly. And it's why I send my links out as much as I can because you've got to basically scream for attention. So that's the first thing I do. I spend about an hour, going through social stuff and doing that. There's any number of housekeeping things to do, some stat updating or something that hit me. I'm gonna, like the other day, and this was at the end of the season. I don't know that you want to talk about losing focus. We were talking about Leody Taveras, and typically I'd go and I'd like make some notes over the course of a season. But like this season had gotten so far away from me, I never noticed this. But Leody basically became a platoon player and was only playing against lefties, and I never noticed it. Typically, I would go back and I'd be looking at some of those matchups early on or earlier on. I didn't this year, and I feel bad because it would have been a story. But that's the kind of stuff I look for is like, is there anything I missed? I'll go back and read the game notes from the night before. Go back and check Twitter some more.
As you should.
Of course. And there's some just general housekeeping now more with the paper. There's more communication in terms of like you slacking the office, more planning. But I'm going to the ballpark. I'm usually going to the ballpark for a 7:00 game. I'm leaving 2:00, so I'm there 2:30 at the latest, and I'm there until 11:30. So pretty much from my day at the paper is from 2 to midnight, and then I literally come home and fall into bed because I am old now. it's amazing. Like so, Kennedy Landry from MLB.com I think is 20. I don't want to. 26.
Mid-20s, let's say. Yeah.
And Sean McFarland, my backup, is 28. And I'm literally old enough to be their father. So I joke around that they're like my beat writing children.
I was gonna say I do love those pictures you take with Kennedy and Sean and all that, where it's like, here's my.
It's weird to me, but it's cool. I like the fact that they for some reason seem to enjoy being around me. I don't know why, but yeah, they're my kids.
Evan Grant is Evan Grant, but I must say, I do enjoy the work of Sean McFarland quite a bit.
He's a good young writer. He's got a really nice conversational touch.
Yeah, I enjoy him quite a bit. Now,
I'm fortunate that he's become my partner.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
for everybody.
Yes.
Now let's talk.
My life expectancy as well.
Yeah, we need you around as long as possible, Evan.
Yeah, we need you around and on the job as long as possible.
Based on my retirement, my retirement fund. I'm gonna be around for a while.
Let's talk a little bit about the way you go about doing said job. Now you get out there at 3:00, you say, and I remember a time when if you were at the ballpark early enough, you could pretty much go wherever you wanted to. If you wanted to go down in the room and see who was down there that you might be able to talk to, you could.
Yes, but that's all changed. All of it's changed, and a lot of it changed rapidly after COVID.
Yeah.
We don't spend nearly as much time in the clubhouse as we once did, and clubhouses, particularly the Globe Life Field clubhouse, home clubhouse, have gotten so big and so full of amenity that players are rarely just sitting at their locker waiting to entertain you in conversation. And when they are at their lockers, they're often in their iPads or their iPhones, just like anybody who's in their mid-20s. So we're not around nearly as much. I do have the ability to kind of like go down on the field if there's early batting practice or early work. I'll like to talk to some coaches and stuff then. But we're not around the team nearly as much. The NFLPA last week, I don't know if you saw this, but the NFLPA...
Yes, I did see that. And that's where I was going with this.
So basically, the NFLPA is trying to take reporters out of the locker room.
Yeah.
And reporters definitely don't want that. And it's not because reporters want to stand around watching guys in towels. That's awkward for everybody. Nobody enjoys it.
Especially when you're wearing one too.
Correct. And I do need to change up my linen and towel wardrobe a little bit for the season. But the opportunity for the Cowboys writers, when they're in a locker room this week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's their only opportunity to really talk to guys one-on-one. You have very few players' phone numbers, and you have even less that you have like regular contact with. If you want to talk to a player and try and find something that is exclusive or that you've identified and you want that question on your own, or to develop more trust with the player, that's the only time to really do it.
Yeah.
And when you take reporters out of the locker room or out of the clubhouse, you impact that ability. The Olympics have this mixed zone where kind of the athletes come by and you can stop them, grab them, but you're not allowed in any locker rooms there. I do think that while fans look at it and say, well, you don't need to be in there when they're in a bunch of towels, they don't see or don't appreciate sometimes what it is that we're able to gather in terms of information that's essential to the way we do our jobs.
Yeah, and I understand that and appreciate all that. And I've made all of those scenes myself many times over the years. But I've never been comfortable with the situation, because it does seem to me like that's their turf, like that is their place, and I am infringing upon it.
Well, I think that is. I do think that is an important element to understanding the room. Right, the clubhouse is the players' room, and we are invited in there for a period of time. So you need to treat it with respect. You need to treat them with respect. Nobody, I can tell you this, after games, nobody goes up and talks to players in the Rangers clubhouse while they're sitting there in their jog.
Yeah.
They get dressed, people wait in an unobtrusive manner somewhere else, or will linger at least nearby so guys know, hey, we want to talk to you before you get out of here. But it is, the locker room and the clubhouse is kind of their sanctuary, and I've had players tell me that. And we do need to understand that part of the job allows us in there, but it is not our turf. It is theirs.
Yeah. What do you think covering the Rangers is going to be like with the lessening presence of John Blake? I think this is a very fair question because John has agreed to come on here in a couple
Has he
weeks.
really?
Yes,
Next
he
week, I
has.
believe.
Any
weeks
more
from now.
questions, Rhyner?
Only in Japanese.
Only in Japanese.
I can't wait for that.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Well, listen, a couple things. First of all, before I say anything about John, Rich Rice.
Let's tell people who he is first.
All right. Yes, we should.
John Blake has been the longtime media demigod over the Texas Rangers.
See, I just assumed everybody by now knew who John Blake was because of the number of drops played on the air and because of the memes on TV when he gave Dave Raymond the throat-slitting sign.
We've done our best to publicize him over the years, but just to make sure that everybody knows who we're talking about, John Blake is the guy who ran the media scene, and he was a stern taskmaster. He was a very no-nonsense guy. And if you were going to, go out there and do your job the way I did or the way you do, then you had to come to terms with John Blake in one way or the other. And you probably had to recognize the fact that sooner or later you were going to cross him and it might not be terribly pleasant.
Oh, we've had any number of arguments, and he's had any number of arguments with anybody. And when I wrote the story about him announcing his retirement, I got so many texts and emails from people about their story involving John Blake yelling at them. But that what I think needs to be said, though, is that John comes from a generation of PR guys that saw their job as being a liaison, that they worked for the club and the club's interests were always first.
Right.
But they understood and appreciated the role of the media.
Yeah.
And so their job was to be a liaison. John Blake in 28 years never gave me a story, never gave me a tip, nothing. But he was always there, and when you needed to get something facilitated, he may balk and he may argue with you, but ultimately he saw the importance of what you were doing. The Rangers in that regard he's been a tremendous asset. I think I pointed out I wrote a story when he announced his retirement, and I pointed out that, look, in the span of from 2009 through 2012, you had Ron Washington, and you had the bankruptcy case where the team was bankrupt and was sold.
Right.
You had Ron Washington announcing to the team that he had a cocaine relapse or it slipped with cocaine. You had Josh Hamilton having an alcoholism relapse. You had any number of crises. And he managed all those. And the thing is, those players all told people all told pretty much their side of the story, and still a decade later, they're all pretty much revered in this area. And I think that speaks to what transparency and what the ability to, on the media side, get your side of the story out ahead of the cycle, and B, make sure that people don't feel like you have swept them under the bus.
And he was a master at all that.
Yeah, he's the best in the business. And I need to say this. Rich Rice, who has been John's longtime right-hand man, who came to the Rangers in 2000 and has basically run the day-to-day side of the media relations department for the last couple of years, really since COVID, is outstanding. And it takes, as you know, Mike, right? it takes a special personality to coexist with John. He's a hard boss. He's a hard taskmaster. He's an incredible wealth of knowledge. And Rich has the perfect temperament to absorb all it. You know, I used to say this about Rusty Greer, right? That Rusty had this ability to like absorb all of what Will Clark's personality was and kind of throw out all the bull and keep what was really essential. And I think that Rich has that same kind of personality where he's able to filter what's a little bit of show, what's a little bit of bluster, get all of that, distill it down to what is really helpful. And I think he's going to be a great help to the media going forward.
Who or what got you into writing baseball?
So, you know, this is like so stupid, but when I was like 12 or 13, I guess if anything, I was practical. And I realized that I wanted to work in sports when I was an adult. And I knew I couldn't play baseball because people had started throwing breaking balls and I looked like an idiot.
Was baseball your favorite sport as a kid?
Baseball was growing up, yeah. Because you know the story. My dad introduced me to baseball. It was his favorite sport. That was where we bonded. He took me to other sporting events growing up in Atlanta. And they were all the most memorable and most joyful experiences of my childhood. But baseball was where we really bonded. And he was a Dodger fan, and I was a Brave fan. So that was quite the tension moment there. But I decided I wanted to work in sports, and I wasn't smart enough at that point in time, like John Daniels was when he was a kid, and decided, I'd like to work in sports, and he decided to pursue a business degree because that's what I would tell kids now.
Yeah.
You want to work in sports, pursue a business degree or a law degree because you can either be an agent or you can be an executive. There's not a whole lot of future in being Johnny sports writer. But at that point in time, that's kind of how I saw my path to sports writing. And the other thing is, like, I didn't journal as a kid. I wasn't a big journal guy or anything like that. But I did feel like I had a fairly good ability to bullshit my way through essay questions in high school.
Yep.
So I thought, all right, well,
that's
I got
a good ability
here
to have.
Yeah,
I had that too.
Here. So I one day when I was 15, I called the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I said, how do you become a sports writer? And like the sports editor actually picked up the phone. And he was so tickled by this idiot kid calling him that he basically took a liking to me. And that fall brought me in as a clerk. My parents drove me to work the first day that I worked at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution because I didn't have a driver's license yet. And I worked as a clerk there, and I was immediately addicted to wanting to work in a daily sports department. Like I said, I grew up with the newspaper. My dad read the newspaper every morning. It used to be, this is so politically incorrect, but right, the Journal-Constitution, it was the Constitution, was the morning paper. My father got it in 1969, 1970. The Braves were still new in Atlanta. And the banner every morning had Atlanta Constitution, and in the top, you remember the old Braves logo of the
yes.
Screaming Indian.
Oh, yeah.
And that logo, which is, again, right now, would be unacceptable, was in the corner every day. And if the Braves had won, the guy would be smiling. If the Braves had lost, there would be like a frown on his face. And to me, that was the greatest thing in the world. And so it
kind of wish the Cowboys would have done that with Cowboy Joe back in the day.
Or just do it now with Rowdy.
I
you have the power, Evan.
Like I want to do on Twitter. I want to do. You know how the ball at the Hyatt lights up, right?
Yeah.
And it puts the T. And I want to get one of our photographers, because my photos are not nearly good enough. I want one of our photographers to shoot that at night when it's lit up. And when the Rangers win, I'm going to put that up. And when they lose, I'll just put up a dark picture of the Reunion Tower ball.
Genius.
But I haven't been able to get anybody to do it yet. So that's how I
it.
got into loving newspapers and loving sports. And it felt like the two things were meant to be.
And you were how old at this time?
15. So
you as a 15-year-old were allowed into the sanctum, and you just felt the vibe, huh?
I worked. I was not yet 16 when I worked my first shift as a clerk at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in 1981, and I have had 3 months where I was a bag boy at a grocery store. And that's the only other job I've had outside of working in a newspaper sports department.
That's incredible.
Awesome.
I've been really lucky. Yeah, it's incredibly cool. The other part of it is like every 2 weeks now, I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat saying, what am I going to do if this goes under? I have no other skills.
The podcast realm awaits you.
Join us.
I'd be taking Ashley's card and making sure we're in touch after all this.
Let's see. Who are your baseball writing Jedis? Who are the first baseball writers you read that drew you in?
So again, like this is it. Like my situation is so. I want to say unique, but the first guy that I read on a regular basis was Jerry Fraley. He was covering the Braves when I was coming of age, as a teenager. And so I read Jerry Fraley. I worked in the sports department near Jerry Fraley. I was scared to speak to Jerry Fraley because as we all got to know Jerry Fraley, and he could be a little bit, what's the right word?
Intimidating?
Intimidating. That's a good word. He was a lot more intimidating in the 1980s. B, just imagine being a 17 or 18-year-old. So I didn't speak to Fraley for like the first 3 years I was around, but I read him every day. And eventually, at one point in time, I will tell you. I've told this story, I think, to other people, but this is the story of how I met Jerry Fraley for the first time. He had been working on the story of it was in the offseason, and he was such a good reporter. Having done the Braves, they moved him on to do some Falcons stuff. And then when Falcons season was over, which it usually was about the middle of November, they asked him to move on to some other stuff. And the big story going into the 84 season, I think, was that the rumors had started to spark up that Herschel had signed with an agent. And Herschel Walker was, at that point in time, the deity of the state of Georgia. And Fraley was involved in this coverage. And I was working as a clerk, and one of my jobs as a clerk was there was a little like concession stand lower in the building. And these guys were all on print deadlines, so they were like glued to their computers. So you had to take around a little tray and go to each person and say, "Can I get you something, from the refectory?" And I saw Fraley over there talking with one of the copy editors, and I knew I should ask him, but I was afraid to go over there. And I started to go over there with my little tray, and I went like this, and I opened my mouth, and I said, Mr. Fraley. And about the time that I said that, and I didn't even get the whole thing out, he burst out over this paragraph with this copy editor arguing about it, and he goes, "Herschel's a fraud. He's a fraud. He's a fraud." And I dropped my tray and ran away. And so it scared the hell out of me. Turned out he probably was right about all that stuff at that point in time. But that was the first time I met him. I read him religiously. I was scared to death of him. I eventually did get to know him a little bit. And then he kept up with me as I kind of embarked on my sports writing career. And 8 years later, when the morning news had an opening, somehow, I was the guy that they called. And so then I got to work with the guy who was my sports writing idol and who was the best that I ever saw for 20 years. Just doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't get much better than that. I will say this about Jerry Fraley. He and I got to know each other as time passed, but for a long time, we didn't speak. I was intimidated by him too. And honestly, I thought he was kind of full of shit. But then I would read what he wrote, and I would watch the game that night, and I would see what he wrote come down chapter and verse. And I would see this again and again and again. It always had to do with something that was wrong with the Rangers and why the Rangers are this.
Well, that was an easy topic at that point.
Well, yeah, it was, but still to see somebody write it. No, I mean, first of all, around here, nobody was doing baseball like that then. Nobody wrote about what was wrong with things,
Well, long before, like, Fraley kept daybooks were basically keeping ledgers of player stats. And most reporters did that. But Fraley went far, and above that. And before there were advanced metrics that people were doing, he was basically calculating all these things. What a team did when they had a lead, what a team did when certain relievers pitched, the impact of outs on the bases, things like that people were not keeping. And he did it by hand for the entire league. He was a savant when it came to baseball. Now, he was intimidating, and he didn't suffer fools, and there were a lot of people that probably, and in some regards rightly so, considered Jerry to be a bully. But here's the thing I can tell you. If you woke up and read a story that Jerry Fraley wrote, whether it was on the Rangers, whether it was on the Cowboys, whether it was on the Stars, or whether it was NASCAR, you got something out of that story that you didn't know, no matter what level of fan you were. He had the ability, and you say what was wrong with the Rangers, but I think for me it was he had the ability to identify underlying issues.
Yes, he did.
And whether it was something that the club was late in addressing or that the club needed to address, he identified those, explained why it's important, and made a really strong case for it. This is a guy who went to Carnegie Mellon and was going to be an engineer, and he ended up a sports writer. He was a brilliant man. But sports was his passion.
Yeah.
And God bless it that Fraley received the Baseball Writers Lifetime Achievement Award from the Hall of Fame this July, and I was able to be up there for that, and it was a great moment and great closure for his kids. But he was the epitome of what you envision a baseball beat guy to be.
Yes, he was.
There were times during the last couple months of his life that he really struggled to get around the ballpark, but nobody dared say, Jerry, you don't need to be here, because we all knew that it was the right place for him.
Yeah, it was where he wanted to be.
I mean, I told people, I think I may have even told him, I said, I think when all this is said and done, you're going to want to write your story, close your computer, and go. And that's going to be it. And basically, he worked almost up until that day.
Wow. I just know that I would read something that he wrote about what was wrong with the Rangers, what was wrong with this guy, that guy. And I think, okay, come on now. This can't matter that much. I mean, you're drilling down on details that are really not that germane and that significant to the game. And then that night, I would turn on the TV and watch the game and see it come down chapter and verse, just like he said.
The first spring that I covered baseball with him, and I was the backup, and I was just trying to soak everything up, was 97. And Will Clark in 96 had a bad leg. That was the year before I got here, right?
Yeah.
But he had a bad leg late in the season. And there was a game early in spring where Will went first to third on a single. A spring training game early in spring, guy just went from first to third on a single. Fraley wrote his full daily story about that, right? And it was just an education to me that there is in everything in baseball, you can find something that's newsworthy. And he explained it and why it was important and why it mattered the year before.
He was incredible. Let's get into a little bit of this past season, because people...
You really want to bring the mood. We're going to put the dark in Dark Companion, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. We always try to put the dark in Dark Companion.
Got to bring the room down, Evan.
Now, I have my own ideas why this thing, or exactly what happened here and why things went the way they did. But I want to hear yours. Now, mine have to do with injuries, largely.
Sure.
I mean, you got to, any team, any sport, I don't care who it is, don't care what it is. If you can't put your guys out there on the field, you're going to have problems. And I think one of the biggest injuries, and I've said this over and over again, probably said it on here, but I'm going to say it again. I think one of the biggest and most significant injuries the Rangers had was when they lost Cody Bradford early in the season.
All right. Well, you gave me a little bit of a veer there. I was with you. I think losing Cody was significant.
Yeah.
The biggest injury for me was still the Josh Young injury early on.
Yeah. That was the big one. But I think losing Cody Bradford, I don't know. Maybe it just signified to me the way things were going to go.
Well, the thing about losing Cody Bradford was here's finally a young guy that you've gotten who looks like he's going to develop into a starter.
Yeah.
You've got you need to get through the first half of the season and you're thin pitching wise, and this guy looks like he can fill in. And then what did you end up having? You had in May and June, you basically constantly had to scramble to get a rotation. But for me, if you pick one thing that was wrong with this team, what was it? It was that the offense scored 198 runs fewer than it did a year before. And nobody saw the offense being an issue going into the season. I think I wrote in spring training, this offense could be better than it was a year before.
Yeah.
When it led the American League. Why was this offense bad? This offense didn't hit fastballs. From top to bottom, it did not hit fastballs. Why didn't it hit fastballs? Okay, well, Josh Young and Evan Carter were probably their two best fastball hitters. You lose Young 4 games into the season. Mm-hmm. Okay, that takes a fastball guy out of your lineup. Now it also makes you're kind of shuffling guys around. Carter goes out with the back injury 3 weeks later. You become a very fastball susceptible team, and I think it just kind of piled up from there. In addition to all of that, I do think you look at the components on this team on the position player side. You've got Marcus Semien, who is a workaholic in one manner. Goes out, takes his ground balls religiously every day. Basically the same number of ground balls every day. Takes swings on the field. Same thing, day in, day out. Okay? Corey Seager is a workaholic in a completely different manner. He is on video with his private hitting instructor and basically reconstructs his swing every day in like a 2-hour video call. He's never let anybody like from the media see it up close, but we've seen little bits and pieces. And then he goes out, and what they both do is they both perform, but they're different personalities, right?
Yeah.
I think that Josh had the ability, and this was going to be like he had a full year last year. This was going to be a year I think that he emerged as kind of the galvanizer. Is that a word? Galvanizer?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice word.
Yes. So I think he was the kind of guy who would have made that team chemistry on the position player really galvanize. And losing him 4 games into the season, I think, hurt them on a number of levels, something that they just never were able to come back from. I had a bad feeling the night that Josh got hit in Tampa, and it only, what took place over the next month really only reinforced that. I do think that, I think Cody gets overlooked only because he's not a 95-mile-an-hour fastball guy. And everybody's been so fixated on Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. You have to have guys who don't throw hard, who don't fit the profile of top prospect, who come through and develop for you. Cody Bradford's a left-handed pitcher who throws low 90s when he's hot and controls the strike zone. You know who else was a left-handed pitcher who was a 6th-round pick like Cody Bradford who didn't throw hard and controlled the strike zone?
Who's that?
Dallas Keuchel. You need guys like Dallas Keuchel. And that's the profile that Cody has. Is he going to be Dallas Keuchel? It's hard to ever say a guy's going to be a Cy Young Award winner. But if he gives you innings in that regard, that's a really valuable player development.
That's, I mean, early in the year, he threw 2 games that were just absolutely sterling. I mean, from out of the blue too. I mean, I didn't think anything of him till then.
And here's the thing: like Jacob DeGrom, we focus on Jacob, and Jacob throws 98 miles an hour, and then his slider is ridiculous. And we talk about him being a freak, and then when a guy like Bradford comes along and he's got like great command like that, we talk about how he wins in spite of his stuff. His stuff is good.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not going to light up the advanced metrics that we see on Baseball Savant and that everybody likes to quote. He's got great command of his fastball. He does not walk guys. I brought up this point to somebody the other day that yes, he does not overpower guys. Here's one thing though: his strikeout to walk rate, which is an analytic the Rangers put a lot of weight on, it's 4-1. That's well above league average. And for me, that portends the ability to have long-term success.
Yeah. The other thing is nobody on this team had a year that was much like what they had the year before. Probably The one that came closest was Seager, but nobody else really got there.
No, I mean everybody, including Seager, every starter on the offensive side declined.
Yeah.
You know, I just did we were talking about things that I was doing this week. I just put up my infield analysis this afternoon. The only guy who was the biggest positive development was Josh Smith. And when a utility guy is your biggest positive development, A, the threshold's kind of low because this was a guy who had less than 600 OPS going into the year. And B, it probably tells you that a lot of other things went wrong. Josh's development was important, and I think it's going to be significant for a championship club. But everybody else declined. Everybody. And I think, to your point, or maybe where you're going, there were guys last year who seemed to really break through.
Yeah.
Leody Taveras, Jonah Heim, Adolis, to some extent. I mean, we saw his OPS really go up. I don't think you would put Nate Lowe in that because his OPS was a little bit higher in 2022. But these were three guys that you expected were really taking steps forward, and each of them had a precipitous decline in performance this year.
Especially with Jonah. I mean, I thought the Rangers had found their catcher for the next, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even longer than that. And now where are they?
Well, I think, look, they're going to go into next spring with him being their frontline catcher, I expect. But he has certainly raised questions, and I think they're now in the market for somebody who can push him a little bit. And if that means that somebody has the ability to go into the season as a 70-game starter with the chance to maybe push him for more, I think that is possible. He's really fallen off.
Yeah. Well, this team's got a lot of things to do. What do you think matters most?
Still pitching. I mean, because I think there's going to be limited resources this winter. We could do another hour about how the RSN situation and Bally all impact the possibility. But the bottom line is probably Ray Davis would like to get under the luxury tax threshold. So it's going to give you less resources to work with. You'll have some money to spend, but you've got all these hitters under contract. You've got a lineup under contract. You're losing Nathan Eovaldi in all likelihood. They'd love to have him back, but he's a free agent. You're losing Andrew Heaney. That's 60 starts right there between the two of them. And your top two innings eaters. You're losing Max Scherzer, who didn't really contribute this year, but you've got to replace a number of starters. And if I'm the Rangers, I don't know how much I can count on John Gray right now. He's had 7 stints on the DL in 3 years. Gave you 100 innings this year. So I think the bulk of the money is going to be spent on pitching, and we haven't even gotten into. Chris Young and staff did a magnificent job addressing the biggest single issue going into this season, which was the back of the bullpen. Right?
Yeah.
It was horrific during the 2023 regular season. The signings of David Robertson and Kirby Yates were brilliant, and they played out as way above the value that they signed them for. But both those guys
Are free agents. Yeah.
So you've got to reconstruct the back of your bullpen.
There is a lot to do here. What do you worry about most of all those things we just talked about? If you could tell them and have them address one thing, would it be bullpen? Would it be a start at the back end of the rotation, or something in the lineup, or what matters most here to you?
I have gotten fixated, right or wrong. I have gotten a little bit fixated on this. And here's the thing. I will say this. I think Leody Taveras has value, and I think that he's only 26, and there's still some upside ahead of him. But he's had 1,700 big league plate appearances. At some point, you kind of are what you are, And in baseball, by 1,500 plate appearances, usually you've identified a guy. He had a big jump last year, and he regressed this year. And so my question is, do the Rangers have a center fielder in Leody Taveras? And if they don't, then what do they do? Do they move Evan Carter to center field, play Wyatt Langford in left? What do they do at DH? That's the biggest deployment question I have. I don't have doubts that the Rangers will go out and sign some starting pitchers, and based on their track record the last couple of years. I think those guys will be serviceable. And I think they've got some younger guys coming along. I mean, Rocker getting to the big leagues this year was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Even though Jack Leiter didn't have a ton of success this year, it was a big deal. You look at their top their top prospects, 4 of their top 5 prospects are pitchers who may pitch in the big leagues next year. So I think their pitching situation is, on the development side, much better than it's been for a while. But I do think they still need to go out and sign a pitcher or two. I think they will be okay in that regard. I don't know what they can do on the outfield situation.
And now, with more on all that, let's turn things over to Shoopy. He's got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, I got a couple things for you, Evan.
What do you got, Shoop?
So we had Sarah Blaskovich on recently. I know y'all have become foodie friends.
She's one of my favorite people at the paper, if not number one.
As she should be, but it's been kind of fun being a social media friend of yours, following you as you've kind of become a chef, a cook, whatever you want to call it, like, making brisket in your backyard on the grill, or just seeing you kind of become a food guy.
So that's the way that I've gotten to decompress from baseball and really kind of the world in general is like I've started cooking more. All that was kind of a post-pandemic development. Mm-hmm. But the thing, we got rid of the big green egg when we moved into the townhouse because we've got like a rooftop deck and no yard, and carrying that thing up to the top would have been the death of me. So basically, I have the cast iron skillet in my stovetop, and I've just found that like finding recipes and deciding I'm going to make some stuff and following the recipe like blocks out the rest of the world. The other thing is my stepdaughter, who I call my daughter. She basically decided to give up red meat and chicken when she was a freshman in college. And so she's become a pescatarian, heavy focus on fish and veggies. And she likes food. And so it's been an area where we've really bonded. And so, like last night was pasta night. We made homemade pasta. I did not post any pictures of the rigatoni that we made from scratch because it came out a little bit doughy, but it was first attempt. Right? It was first attempt.
Yeah, you don't want to get roasted for your doughy pasta.
I don't want to screw up the pasta.
You don't want a Lincoln Riley situation.
You don't want to post it.
Correct. So
wait, where are you finding these recipes at?
What's that?
Where are y'all finding your recipes?
I just like Google different, or she'll Instagram me or TikTok me posts, and there's a couple people that we both follow. But that's a lot of it's from Instagram, and she just likes spicy food, and my wife does not. So that's been kind of a hard road to navigate.
I literally went down a rabbit hole of foodie stuff like 2 nights ago. For 2.5 hours, I'm sitting there scrolling food, and it's just like homemade pastas, and I'm like, I'm never gonna make any of these, but I'm saving them all.
Oh, it's insane. Like I've been probably pandemic as well, like haven't cooked as much as I'd like, but like food YouTubers have become such a big part of my life. Like just seeing people put together recipes and coming up with different ideas of how to attack a traditional way of doing things.
And so much. My favorite thing right now that I make at home is not even a dish, but it's this sauce, this ají verde. It's a Peruvian green sauce. It's
Did you bring some for us today?
What's that? I did not bring any. But it's basically cilantro, jalapeno, and mayonnaise. All right? And it comes out bright green, and it will make anything you put it on better. But so it's so simple to make, and I never knew about it, until a year or two ago. And so finding stuff like that is incredibly fun, and then making some twists on it. And then now that you get a little bit more educated on food, like you realize, okay, like every culture basically has some version of this, right? Mm-hmm. In South America, it's chimichurri. In the Middle East, it's shug. And so you take different parts of different recipes and say, all right, well, let me try this and see how it comes out. And that's been fun. So we have a good time with it. It's been a blast. And I also think, like, on Twitter, I hate to say this, but you almost have to brand yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a core group that, like, they like baseball. They like the fact that I'm really proud of my family and that I like to spend time with them, and that, this has become my hobby, and that I like to play around with food. And so people get a better picture of who you are.
Yeah.
How upset were you that you didn't get to go to the state fair
Yes.
tasting with everybody?
Sarah invited me this year, and we were in Anaheim for the last series of the season, and I was very bitter that the guide came out last week with all their rankings, and I had no input. It's a sore subject for me.
I was going to say, I feel like that's one of those where you're just like, damn it, I'm in Anaheim. Why did I not take this
Although
trip
I don't
off?
know, like, did you see the thing it ranked last on the list? It was,
no.
I think, the Sugar Rush pickles. It was.
Yeah, no, I'm out on that.
I don't know that I could have even shoved one of those into my mouth.
That would have been a 0 straight up, so I wouldn't have tried it.
It was pickles in ice. Was there ice cream and cereal?
Yeah.
There's like all
it was
kinds of weird stuff.
It was
It
terrible.
supposedly won most creative like a few months ago, but
I feel
everything
like
I
sometimes
saw
they give
just-
most creative to just stuff that just we'll just put a bunch of crap together.
right. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be creative.
Right.
What were in...
Things have to go together.
Yeah, what were the
Know
pickles?
this? Things have to go together.
I think you can push the boundaries a little bit, but this is a little bit much.
Like,
Yeah.
were they like Kool-Aid pickles or something?
There were,
I think that was involved, but yeah, just too many bits.
yeah,
So
too
have
many
you,
bits.
You haven't been to the state fair this year yet?
We
or-
have not.
Okay.
We're going to go. We'll probably let all the Texas OU people revel all
Mm-hmm.
week, and then we'll go the final week. But yeah, I'm planning to go this year.
Nice.
Yeah. Have you been?
Not this year yet, but got
What do you-
tickets and definitely will be going. You want to go together?
What do you have on your list to try?
I know my brother and his wife went over the weekend, and they got the cotton candy bacon.
The cotton candy bacon.
How was it?
That they said it was great. Like they actually went in and bought another one apparently.
Okay.
After having one.
You know the ballpark. Remember a couple years at the ballpark when they had the cotton candy hot dog?
Oh yeah,
Ew.
That was such a terrible idea.
that sounded like it.
Yeah, it was. I and Sarah and I have gone back and forth. We had the flaming Cheeto hot dog. I was not big on that. I don't like. It was just Cheeto dust on a hot dog.
Cheetos don't fix everything. Like hot Cheeto, people say that hot Cheetos fix everything. Bull crap.
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me.
All right, I'm going to next time we have Sarah on here, and we do have her on here every so often just to talk about new things going on out there. Next time we do, I'm going to ring you up and see if you can get over here.
Hell yeah.
That.
Heck yeah.
That'd be fun.
Sarah and I need to have our own podcast.
Join
Yeah, you do.
join Stolen Water Media.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here we are.
We have space.
At your service.
We need
Yeah.
to have a podcast called He Said, She Said about going to a restaurant together and like the woman's perspective and the man's perspective on the restaurant.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
I say the
you
next
you
one
did
we
it on our
have-
show, so technically this is our intellectual property now.
I was gonna say the next time we have Sarah, we need to have you and her, and let's all go to a restaurant with
We
them.
have so much fun when we go out to eat, and we've gone out on couples dates with her and Chase, and it's just a blast. It's so much fun.
She is
But
so fond of you.
You know, my best friend in Dallas was, well, and she's not in Dallas full time anymore, but was Nancy Nichols, who was a food critic at D Magazine for a long time. So that was kind of how I got into the whole like restaurant scene. And so that's hysterical. But what you do when Nancy was the food critic at D, the restaurant critic, you know, everybody thought, what a glamorous job. But like you'd go out and have a bad meal somewhere, and then you had to go out and have that meal again to give them like a fair shot. And so you're like, I'm going to go willfully give myself another bad meal. And you ate a lot of bad meals in that regard.
That just like killed my whole vibe and my whole mood right there.
Well, it's your dark companion. So
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow, you made it so dark.
That's right. That's what we do around here.
Yeah.
We
Made
got a lot of lights in here, but it's dark, man.
Yeah, we don't have all the lights on.
we don't have all the lights.
All right, you had one more for him,
I
Shoopy.
did, and,
I
this-
want to see what he has to say about
Yeah,
this.
this one I think trends a little more personal for me and you, Evan.
Yes.
Seeing you a few years ago, I wish I knew the exact date of it, but when you first announced that you were seeing your wife and getting married and all that, you know, it was a little bit later in your life. I remember you kind of mentioning that on your social media, and as someone that has kind of gotten to do that as well, and becoming, hopefully, on my side of things, a step parent and all that, just kind of wanted to, I guess, talk a little about that. And, you know, from your side of things, had you kind of I felt at different times like I'd given up hope, or is this ever going to happen?
I gave up hope. I definitely gave up hope. And I mean, Gina and I met. The story on Gina and I is we actually met each other in middle school in South Florida, 1977, and we were very casual friends. And we got reintroduced. This is I'm convinced this is the only good thing that ever happened through Facebook, is we had mutual friends on Facebook who kind of said, well, you guys are in the same town. And I realized that she was in Dallas and I was in Dallas.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And so that's how we got reconnected. And I had given up hope. I was pretty much like, I'll just have I'll have a bunch of friends and I'll go out and do that stuff, and I'm okay being alone. And so, people always say it happens when you least expect it. So it did. It did happen when I least expected. The kids, I always looked at the kids as like I wasn't dating Gina. This was part of the deal. And I always tried to look at it that way. But, both the kids were tweens or teens at the point in time that I came along, and there's an adjustment period for them, and they had, just gone through their parents' divorce. And so that was all, I think, challenging for them, but it's been, there's times when Gina says, like, I think you like the kids more than me. And the truth of it is, I don't know that, like, you always dream about being in a relationship, right? But I don't know that I ever dreamed like what it would be like to be a father or a parent type figure. And so the fact that as these kids have come into adulthood, and that I did not have to deal with changing diapers, that I didn't have to deal with discipline, and I've just been able to see them kind of as peers and watch them grow into adults, has been maybe the most fulfilling thing in my life. We went to last summer in 23. We went to Italy in the middle of the season during the All-Star break for kind of a late graduation present for my stepdaughter. And watching her, she had been to Italy with her mom. She had been with Gina when she was like 9. But watching like Natalie as a 23-year-old walking through the streets of Rome, and just discovering the stuff and more appreciating it than you would as a little kid, was just. Like, that was the sense that I got, okay, this is what it feels like to be a parent, to watch somebody, like, grow and really just kind of soak the world in. So it's been extremely fulfilling. It's been the biggest gift that I could have. But I certainly shouldn't be giving anybody advice, but the only thing I would say about any of it, Michael, is, like, it does take time. I mean, kids have been through the trauma of divorce. In a lot of places, their parents are now in a better place than they were, but it's still, it takes some time for them to say, okay, this is a new person, have to trust this person, have to accept this person, and you've got to accept them. And I still know that there were always boundaries that I couldn't step over. I wasn't, quote unquote, full-fledged parent, but they've always treated me with incredible respect in that regard. So, I don't know any other way to say it, except that it's been like the most fulfilling thing in my life.
No, it's been awesome on my side. Like, I've been dating Darcy for a little more than a year and a half, I'd say.
How old are her kids?
She has a son that's 11. So, okay. So I've known him since he was, in 4th grade, 9 years old, and just seeing the growth, and kind of, I think you were saying, like, you spend so long just hoping to get a relationship, to get a girlfriend. You kind of at some point stop thinking about the possibility of kids or becoming a parent in any way, and to then have it become he's part of the deal, and the comfort level, there's still going to be things we learn about each other and how to deal with each other, especially as it gets into the teenage years. But like, I can tell you, last Christmas, he gave approval of when that next step comes that he is for it. And, a few months ago, he told me he loved me for the first time, like, out loud. Like, he'd shown, that he cares,
affection,
that he he would hug me whenever I would come over or whatever. But that deepening of that, and then now, me and Darcy and him, moved in together about a month ago, and so now we're living together,
Right.
and we're figuring out things again of how much am I participating in certain activities. Homework really is for the best if I don't participate in the homework at all because I'm stupid.
Hey, for any parent. There are a few bigger things than homework.
Yes.
That was one of the great things was, right, like, so Natalie was a dancer. Nick already was driving by the time I came along, and we'd go to his cross-country meets, and I'd participate in that. But Natalie was a dancer, and she was still middle school, so she was still getting carpooled. And so I looked forward to, during the off-season, be able to drive carpool a couple of times. I looked forward to the rare time. If she brought math to me, I was out. If she brought science to me, I was out. But like on social studies, geography kind of stuff, I actually could participate. And when I watched her, as a 7th grader or an 8th grader at that point in time, like get something that she had been struggling with, it was like, okay, this is what life is supposed to be.
Well, you could help her calculate OPS, couldn't you?
I could do the OPS part. Yes, I could do the OPS part. After that, it gets a little bit difficult. Don't ask me to calculate the WAR formula.
Yeah, not ex-WOBA or whatever.
Or ex-WOBA, no.
Yes. Or weighted war, or whatever it is.
Congratulations, man. It is like, it's. I'm happy for you. I've seen you guys post on social media, and I will admit that there's some similarities that I've seen, like, you find all this later in life, and you're maybe a little bit more equipped to deal with it.
Yes.
And you're able to appreciate it that much more.
Absolutely. Like even, because of she's got a job where she's working, in 8 to 5 pretty much every day. And so, especially since moving in and having this job, I've been able to pick them up for carpool every day and stuff like that. Things I never would have thought.
And you never thought like this would be this is
like,
something
this is great.
It's cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
I'm sitting in the carpool line. This is awesome.
Right. Yeah. Just waiting for the damn cars to move. Waiting for the kids to get out, and then maybe we can swing by McDonald's, get him a Happy Meal or something like that, and but just getting to have some time to hang out, or if he needs a little space or whatever, but just being able to chill and just get to know each other a little bit more, just a little bit beyond hey, how was school today, and just kind of getting to the fuller picture of the person.
And when they share real stuff with you, it's that's when the level of trust is established, and where they feel like you're an integral part of their life.
No, it's really, really cool.
That's awesome.
I'm very, very happy for both of us, Evan.
Thank you. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Well, Evan Grant, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man.
This has been great.
Honored to have you. And listen, don't ever think that you're just a baseball writer to people, because you are not. You are so much more.
Well, thank you for saying
you
that.
are a well-rounded guy with all kinds of different aspects to your personality and the things you know about. And everybody appreciates all of those things about
Well, they
you.
just don't. Most of them don't have to see me from like 3 to 10 o'clock p.m. when I'm pretty much a raging asshole every day.
He is Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News. I am Mike Rhyner of Your Dark Companion, and I must tell you one more time about Smoky Rose. We're going to be out there October 11th. That's just in a few days here, from 5 until 9. We're going to have a 4-hour wingding up there. The whole gang's going to be there. Join your old friends and new. There will be hosts from every show on the Sunset Lounge. Shippy and Grooves will be there. Beer 30 Sports O'Clock will be there. That's Ziggy. The Clubhouse will be there. The Angle will be there. And a lot of new shows that we're bringing on board, like Insurance Unhinged, What's Your End Game, and of course, we at Your Dark Companion will be here. Now, you need to try the burn-ins at Smoky Rose. That is my jam over there these days. That is all I want. That is, I don't even want to think about anything else.
They're magical.
Because the burn-ins are that great. All their meats are smoked in the wood-burning smokers, low and slow. That's the right way to do this. If you want to go the salad route, they got several to choose from. They're loaded with the freshest ingredients. Whatever you choose, you won't go home hungry. And don't forget to grab a carefully crafted cocktail. And the vodka bar will be open. They're located in East Dallas, right across from the Arboretum. They got a perfect seat for you inside in a large comfy booth or on the patio. They're open for brunch on Sundays, happy hour 3 until 6. They're at 8602 Garland Road, and we will be there the 11th of October, 5 until 9. So come see your dark companion. Evan, thanks again.
My pleasure. I'll probably be at Smoky Rose at some point in time this month, too.
You better.
That'd be awesome.
I'm going to be at the Arboretum on Halloween night hosting Emerald City for an Arboretum concert, Cool Thursdays. So I'll probably stop by Smoky Rose afterwards.
Yeah,
You
we'll be
should.
there. We're
Make
doing
it
our
a
show.
point.
Awesome. I'll be the one in the costume.
I'll be nude.
Thank you, Shoopy. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Becca. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. This is your dark companion.
All right. I'm gonna go take my pants off.
Your Dark Companion is a Stolen Water Media presentation.